Okay, a warm welcome back to Uxbridge FM and our history show. And we're very pleased to welcome back local historian and chairman of the Uxbridge Local History Society, Ken Pearce, joins us again. Hi, Ken.
Hello there.
Now, we're chatting about the Olympic Games from 1948. Let's hear about those.
Right. World War II ended in 1945, and in the following year, the International Olympic Committee met, determined to revive the Games. And they decided to ask our government here to host the Games in London in 1948. It was a difficult decision for the post-war Labour government. The country was still recovering from the war. Money was short, food was rationed, and there were shortages of many commodities. And there were only 2 years in which to prepare for the event. Nevertheless, the government agreed to host the Games, but of course everything had to be done as cheaply as possible. The 1948 Games are known as the Austerity Games. To build an Olympic village was out of the question, so it was decided that RAF Uxbridge would be the principal base for all the competitors, and it was a good choice, for there was already an athletics stadium on the site, and of course the Uxbridge open-air swimming pool was not far away. Training facilities were good. The RAF station at West Drayton was booked too, together with some colleges and hotels. British competitors living in the London area were asked to stay at home. Wembley Stadium was the main venue, with the Empire Pool next door for the swimming events. Rowing was at Henley, cycling at Herne Hill, and sailing at Torquay. A fleet of buses and coaches was laid on to convey the athletes to their venues. 59 nations took part. There were 4,100 competitors, 390 of whom were women. Heathrow Airport had just opened as a civil airport earlier in the year, and Norfolk was also in use, so many of the teams from abroad flew in. Actually, the New Zealand team came by sea. The voyage took 32 days, and I suppose was not ideal for training purposes. Television coverage of the game was existing for the first time, but it was very limited because few people had sets. On a personal note, a friend and I cycled from Uxbridge to the box office at the stadium and obtained tickets for a day at the athletics. My ticket cost 6 shillings. The official Olympic flag had last been flown in 1936 at the Berlin Games. Unfortunately, a British Army unit had found it in the rubble of a building in Berlin, so it was hastily restored to be ready for the opening ceremony. In the early part of July 1948, the competitors began to arrive, and some were soon here in the town, sightseeing and shopping. Local children actually began to collect autographs, and I've often wondered whether any of these little books are still surviving today. Complaints were received from the athletes in RAF Uxbridge about the clock on St Andrew's Church, which struck the hours all day and night, and they claimed that their sleep was being disturbed. So the striking mechanism was therefore silenced on the church clock for the duration of the Games. The opening ceremony took place on the 29th of July, a beautiful sunny day. Very early that morning, the Olympic flame arrived at Dover, brought across the Channel in a Royal Navy ship. And from there, a series of runners carried the torch through Kent and Surrey to Windsor, and then on to Uxbridge. What a contrast, by the way. Do you remember with 2012? when the flame arrived weeks before the start of the Games and toured the whole country. Here it all happened in one day. And here's the report from the local paper. Uxbridge crowds cheer the torch. The biggest crowd that has ever gathered in the vicinity of the Bucks-Middlesex border at Long Bridge gave an enthusiastic welcome to the Olympic flame into Middlesex on Thursday afternoon. At 2:01, 4 minutes ahead of schedule, Corporal Dafter of RAF Halton sprinted down Chandler's Hill and through a narrow lane kept free by police, cadets and scouts, came to a halt in the centre of the bridge, bearing aloft the flaming torch. There he was greeted by Mr. W.E. Black, chairman of Uxbridge District Council, and other officials. Among the huge crowd were several local people who had gathered at that same spot 40 years before to watch the Olympic marathon runners pass on their way from Windsor to the White City. Waiting with several colleagues and carrying the new torch was A.M. Phipps of Thames Valley Harriers. He was the 3 miles Southern Counties and Middlesex champion. Uxbridge was one of only 2 places between Dover and Wembley where the Olympic flame was given an official reception. And mentioning this fact, Mr. Black acknowledged the honour which had been done to Uxbridge, that the ceremony should have been allowed to take place here. This relay, he went on, has raised considerable interest throughout Europe and indeed throughout the world, and the honour of taking part in it is one which is highly prized. I therefore heartily congratulate these gentlemen on their good fortune in being chosen as bearers of the Olympic flame, and I thank them in the name of Uxbridge for this contribution which they are making to further the great Olympic ideal of the International Brotherhood of Sport. As the Middlesex man now takes up the running, I wish him Godspeed on the completion of his eventful journey. Mr. Black then transferred the flame from the old torch to the new, and Phipps set off on his stage of the route. He made a triumphal journey through the decorated, crowd-lined streets of Uxbridge. In Windsor Street and High Street, traffic had been held up during his progress. Firms in the town closed down temporarily to enable their employees to come out and see the runner pass through. And at the RAF camp, officials and staff of the Olympic Centre gave Phipps a special cheer. At the Western Avenue, the Thames Valley Harrier man handed over the flame to Mr. Riches of Queen's Park Harriers, who bore it a stage further on its way to Wembley. I said earlier that food rationing was still continuing, so did the athletes eat well? Well, some countries actually came to our aid. Denmark sent 160,000 eggs, and Ireland sent 5,000 eggs. Czechoslovakia sent 20,000 bottles of mineral water. Some competitors brought food with them, and the team from USA actually had regular supplies of food flown into Heathrow almost daily. I quote again from the local paper. Hungry? Then read how the athletes lived. With the Olympic events completed, the dominant topic among sports fans is the overwhelming American success. The main conclusion seems to be that training and diet have put the Americans on top. I visited the chef at Uxbridge camp, who works for the official Olympic caterers, and he said that no competitor housed at Uxbridge went short of food, and explained that some nations actually shared with the less fortunate. For example, South Africa and the Swiss shared some of their food with the British team. For breakfast, The Americans usually had orange juice, a cereal, 2 rashers, 2 eggs fried in butter, toast, marmalade, and half a pint of milk. Their own eggs, bacon, and orange juice was flown in. The British team's normal breakfast was stewed fruit or grape juice, a gift from the Canadians, porridge, 2 rashers, 1 egg, toast, marmalade, and half a pint of milk. Lunch for the Americans was a slice of melon or soup, the thickest beef steak you've seen for years, potatoes usually mashed with milk and butter, beans, peas or spinach, apple pie, cheese, a pear, a peach, half a pint of milk, and a bar of milk chocolate. The meat and chocolate were again flown in from the States. The fruit used at the camp came as gifts mainly from Holland, so all teams who wanted fruit got it, but only the Americans had chocolate daily. A favourite with the British team were rice puddings, some of which were taken cold by the walkers on their races. Yet the nations to whom rice was a staple diet abhorred the idea of using it in puddings, and cabbage was taboo for the Americans, who considered it almost fatal for swimmers. As the United States scooped the pool at Wembley, perhaps British swimmers will think twice about eating cabbage in future. The closing ceremony took place on the 14th of August, after which the guests departed. And at RAF Uxbridge, the servicemen and women found a small luxury had been left for them. They had never had bedside mats before. But despite the circumstances, the austerity games are now regarded as a great success, and they even made a financial profit.
I quite fancy the Americans catering. That sounds rather nice. Well, thank you very much, Ken.
This is not local information, but I'm interested to discover that the longest race for women was 200 meters. It was thought at that time in history that anything longer was something that women could not cope with. These gentle flowers could only manage short distances, and the thought of a women's marathon was unbelievable.
Look at women now. There you go. That's great. And we've got lots and lots of other talks from Ken. If you've enjoyed this one, uxbridgefm.co.uk, have a look there. Hopefully you'll join us next month when it'll be a bit cooler, we hope. Take care, Ken. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Take care.